This morning, Emily carefully zipped up the suitcase, glanced at the neatly packed items, and sat on the edge of the couch with a sigh of relief. She felt complete satisfaction, knowing everything was ready for her husband's next business trip, every detail accounted for. The essentials were meticulously packed, and she had thoughtfully attached a small keychain shaped like a playful monkey to the suitcase handle. This cute accessory was meant to help Noah avoid mistaking his suitcase for others while traveling. "Did you pack the pants? The work pants? The ones I'll need?" Noah asked, double-checking the suitcase's contents. Lately, business trips had become routine for him. In the past, such trips happened once a month, but now they were part of a regular schedule, Noah heading to a new destination almost every week. He had already crisscrossed half the country and had grown accustomed to the rhythm. "Of course, I've taken care of everything," Emily smiled, leaning in to gently kiss his freshly shaved cheek. "I hope your hard work pays off, and you'll get that promotion soon." "I'm counting on it too," Noah replied with a grin, glancing at his watch. "All right, I've got to go. Otherwise, I might miss the train. I'll be back on the evening of the 9th. He grabbed the suitcase, said one last goodbye to Emily, and hurried out the door. Hoping this trip would bring only positive outcomes, Emily usually stayed home during Noah's trips, tending to daily chores or visiting her mother in a nearby rural town. But this time, things unfolded differently. On the third day of his absence, a problem arose at home. The bathroom pipe started leaking. A thin stream of water trickled from an old, tarnished pipe, pooling into a small puddle below. At first, Emily tried to stop the leak herself. She recalled a helpful tip she'd found online and attempted to wrap the pipe with an old bedsheet, hoping it would at least temporarily slow the water, but her hopes were quickly dashed. The water seeped through faster, and the puddle grew larger. The sheet became soaked and useless almost instantly. Emily glanced at the clock with growing anxiety. It was well past midnight. At such an hour, calling anyone other than an emergency service felt awkward. If Noah were here, he'd fix it in no time. She sighed, feeling utterly helpless. But Noah was far away, and she had to handle this alone. Just in case, she dialed his number, clinging to a faint hope he might answer. All she heard were endless rings. No response. "He's probably fast asleep," Emily thought, setting the phone down with a hint of disappointment. Meanwhile, the puddle on the tiled floor grew, threatening to spread further. It was clear the situation demanded immediate action. In a panic, Emily searched for the emergency services contact, but the numbers on old utility bills led to dead ends. Beyond the leak itself, she was haunted by thoughts of the troublesome neighbor downstairs, Victoria. This young woman was notorious for her difficult personality. She never greeted neighbors and frequently filed complaints with various authorities. Her actions had prompted child services to visit a first-floor neighbor repeatedly, and she constantly harassed a young couple renting an apartment on the top floor with her remarks and complaints. Now, as water began spreading across the bathroom and toilet floor, Emily was gripped by dread. If the leak reached Victoria's apartment, a storm of trouble was sure to follow. Likely, beyond demanding compensation, Victoria would stir up a massive scandal. Emily knew that without Noah, she'd have to face it alone. Her nervous tension grew by the minute. She realized she couldn't wait any longer. In a frenzy, she grabbed her phone and decided to seek help from neighbors through the building's group chat, where residents typically discussed utility issues and shared news. "Maybe someone can suggest what to do?" she thought hopefully, sending a message. "Good evening, everyone. Does anyone know who to call if a pipe bursts?" It was a cry for help. Honestly, her expectations were low since it was well past midnight, but a few minutes later her phone pinged. Filled with hope, Emily opened the chat and found not a reply in the group, but a private message from a neighbor. "Which apartment are you in? I can come check your pipe," he wrote. "Apartment 5, 8th floor," Emily replied, barely catching her breath. Minutes later, the doorbell rang. The homeowner froze for a moment, hesitating. Should she let a stranger into her apartment, especially in the middle of the night? If her husband found out, it could spark a huge fight, she thought, her heart racing. But then a wiser idea struck her. She could say it was an emergency plumber. Finally, she opened the door to find a tall, sturdy young man with a friendly smile. "Where's the trouble?" he asked. "Saw your message and couldn't just ignore it. I had a pipe burst recently too. What a hassle," he said with a chuckle, holding a toolbox. Emily recognized him instantly. He was the guy she often saw in the parking lot and hallway. It turned out to be Ethan, her new neighbor, and as it became clear, a true handyman. Within 20 minutes, the soaked sheets were replaced with 2 sturdy clamps, securely stopping the leak. "I just moved to this city," Ethan shared, packing up his tools. "Don't know many people here yet. Guess this is how we meet. So, if anything comes up, we'll help each other out like neighbors should." Ethan smiled warmly, and Emily nodded eagerly. "I'm so grateful for your help, but I'll probably still need to call a plumber," she said, still unsure if the problem was fully resolved. "That's a job for tomorrow," Ethan laughed, gathering the last of his tools. "Let the utility folks get their beauty sleep. There's this one lady here, a real piece of work. If a single drop reaches her place, brace for war. She'll make your life miserable." "You mean Victoria?" Emily guessed. "Exactly. She's my next-door neighbor," Ethan replied with a smirk, finishing up. "A pretty lady like you must have a husband, right?" he asked playfully. "Of course," Emily confirmed calmly, lifting her chin slightly, proud of the fact. "Well, good. Let everyone know you're a respectable woman, not flirting with just anyone." Ethan winked playfully, spreading his hands. "Seriously, though, I've got an idea. I have an extra ticket to a stand-up show by a famous comedian tomorrow. Got 2 from work, but no one to go with. I barely know anyone here." The offer was tempting. With Noah away, a dull, lonely evening loomed ahead. Emily quickly considered that it could be a nice distraction, but she knew such an outing wasn't entirely appropriate for a married woman. "No, thank you so much, but I can't," she replied, trying to hide a hint of regret, shaking her head slightly. Deep down, she really wanted to go, especially since it would help her unwind, but the thought of neighbors spotting her and spreading gossip that could reach Noah held her back. Emily didn't want a moment of fun to spark rumors that could strain her marriage. The next morning, she rushed to the bathroom to check the pipe. To her immense relief, everything was in perfect order. The 2 new clamps Ethan had installed held the old pipe firmly, with no signs of a leak. She even ran her fingers along the repair, genuinely thrilled the ordeal was over. But then her eyes caught a pair of pliers Ethan had accidentally left on the floor. "I should return these. He went out of his way to help," she muttered, slipping on a jacket. The forgotten pliers almost made her laugh, a reminder of the recent chaos. Emily decided it was only right to thank Ethan again and return his tool. After all, he'd been respectful and kind, helping without hesitation when she needed it most. Minutes later, she stood in his building's hallway, facing 4 identical metal doors. A slight confusion hit her, as each door looked the same, but Ethan had mentioned his apartment was next to Victoria's. Assuming the leftmost door was his, Emily took a deep breath, gathered her thoughts, and pressed the doorbell. A few moments passed with no answer. The hallway's silence felt heavy, and she wondered if she'd gotten the address wrong. Reaching for her phone to check with Ethan, the door suddenly swung open, startling her. There stood Victoria in a short, rather bold robe, glaring at her. "What do you want, dear?" Victoria raised an eyebrow, her tone sharp as usual, her face radiating disdain. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Emily stammered, her heart racing. "I think I rang the wrong door. I meant to visit your neighbor." Victoria gave a dismissive nod and moved to close the door. But in that moment, Emily's eyes caught something that froze her in place. In the hallway behind Victoria stood a painfully familiar suitcase. It was the very suitcase she'd packed for Noah's trip just days ago. She recognized it instantly, especially the little monkey toy dangling from the handle, the one she'd attached to help Noah spot his luggage. Staring at it, shock washed over her. Why was Noah's suitcase here, at Victoria's? Seconds stretched endlessly, and Emily didn't know what to do. Questions swirled in her mind, but shock silenced her. She stood paralyzed before the still open door. Her eyes widened. Before Victoria could slam the door, Emily instinctively pressed her hand against it. Victoria yelped in surprise, stumbling back, clearly unprepared for such boldness. "Have you lost your mind?" she shrieked, her voice rising in confusion. Emily didn't respond. Instead, she pulled out her phone and dialed Noah's number, her heart pounding harder. The call rang, and from deep within the apartment, a familiar ringtone echoed, making Emily freeze. Seconds later, Noah burst out, rushing toward her. "Please, let me explain. I'll explain everything, sweetheart," he repeated frantically. Emily stood stunned, trying to process the scene. She glanced from her husband to his mistress, unable to believe her eyes. It all clicked. Noah had been deceiving her, and not for the first time. Every business trip was just a visit to the neighbor living 2 doors away. While she struggled alone with problems like leaking pipes, her husband was comfortably in another woman's bed. The reality of his betrayal brought tears to Emily's eyes. Her heart ached with hurt. Unable to hold back, she slapped Noah hard across the face, turned, and ran home without a word, leaving him bewildered at the doorstep. But Noah didn't give up easily. For an hour, he tried to get back into their apartment, knocking and ringing the bell, begging to talk. Emily remained resolute. Sitting with clenched fists, she took comfort in knowing the apartment was hers, thanks to her parents. If divorce was inevitable, at least she wouldn't end up homeless. Let Noah move in with his lover if he liked it so much. His suitcase was ready, he could take it. A phone call snapped her out of these grim thoughts. Startled, Emily answered. "Emily, good evening," a pleasant male voice said. "It's Ethan. Have you reconsidered the concert?" But Emily wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone. Her heart had no room for joy or distractions. Cutting him off firmly, she said, "You know, Ethan, don't bother." "All the best," she added. "Fair enough," he replied. "Just so you know, the concert starts at 10 a.m. and I'll swing by for you," Ethan said confidently, adding, "You're strong, Emily. Putting up with cheating and disrespect isn't worthy of you. You deserve better. If you decide to divorce, I'd be happy to support you however I can." Emily tensed at his words. How did Ethan know what happened with Noah? Why mention divorce? She hadn't told anyone. Shaking off the momentary confusion, Emily lifted her head, squaring her shoulders. "Thank you, Ethan. I've made my decision," she declared. "I'm definitely getting a divorce. No more tolerating this humiliation and deceit. It's time for a new life, free of this," she said confidently, though inwardly she wondered, how did Ethan know? The next day, Emily filed for divorce without hesitation. Noah tried to sway her, pleading for another chance, promising to fix everything. But she stood firm. She knew there was no going back. Months later, the divorce was finalized, and Emily faced a fresh start. Free from a failed marriage, she felt a surge of strength and energy. She threw herself into work and personal growth. True to his word, Ethan supported her through the tough times. He invited her on walks and events, helping her cope emotionally. Slowly, their friendship grew into something deeper. First mutual understanding, then affection, and finally love. A year after the divorce, they decided to marry. Their wedding held no trace of the past. It was a new chapter built on honesty, trust, and respect, promising a happy, harmonious future. Meanwhile, Noah, now living with Victoria, watched from their apartment window as his ex-wife got into a car with a young man. Though regret filled his heart, for Emily it symbolized freedom and a new beginning. She was genuinely grateful for that unexpected pipe leak. Perhaps with Ethan things would finally turn out as she'd always dreamed, but that's a story for another day.